Wimbledon 2001. Goran Ivanisevic stood at the baseline, facing a match point against Tim Henman. His first serve had deserted him. The second serve was a liability. Then he hit a 124-mile-per-hour ace down the center line. It was not just a point one, it was a reprieve from execution. That single serve against all logic did not win the match. But it broke the narrative. It proved that the inevitable was suddenly, shockingly avoidable. Every tennis match contains a hidden structure. Beneath the scoreline runs a current of belief, a psychological ledger of who is in control. Players refer to it as momentum, a force that feels as real as gravity on the court. It is not mystical. It is built point by point. From small victories that accumulate into a wave of certainty for one player, and a rising tide of doubt for the other. The serve is the primary tool for manufacturing this force. It is the one moment in the game where a player has total, uncontested agency. This analysis begins at the most elemental shift, the serve that defies the moment's pressure. It is the spark. From there, the journey tracks momentum as it morphs, transfers, and shatters. It examines the tactical adjustments, the external interruptions, and the silent psychological warfare that happens between points. The coming sections will dissect the specific mechanisms, from a crowd's roar to a changed racket string, that can permanently alter a match's trajectory. It starts with a single ball struck with impossible force when all hope seems lost. Before reaching the definitive shifts, other moments whisper of a change in the air. These are the honorable mentions, the subtle cracks that appear before the dam breaks. They are not the single point that turns a match, but the collection of signs that one is coming. Consider the second serve ace. A player facing breakpoint, their first serve a fault, sends a cautious second delivery. It clips the line for an ace. The relief is palpable, but so is the opponent's frustration. A chance was created and then erased by sheer luck. That frustration can linger. Or the net cord winner. A ball clips the tape, dribbles over, and lands dead. The point is awarded by the cruel geometry of the court, not skill. The beneficiary gains a free point. The victim feels cheated by the game itself. This can seed a resentment that clouds judgment on the next rally. Then there is the successful challenge. A player halts play, questions a line call, and sees the electronic review confirm their doubt. The point is replayed. While the correction is just, the act of stopping the opponent's rhythm and being proven right asserts a form of control. It is a small, legal interruption of flow. These moments alone rarely decide outcomes. But they accumulate, they are the kindling, the coming shifts are the match. Following those honorable mentions, a shift occurs that is less about spectacle and more about pure psychological warfare. It is the underdog break. Against a dominant server, the first game is often a formality. The favorite holds with ease, asserting a natural order. But then in the returner's first service game, something cracks, a double fault. A netted volley, suddenly the server faces a break point. And the underdog converts it. The scoreboard reads 2-1, but the impact is seismic. For the dominant player, service games are fortresses. Losing one, especially early, is an invasion. It introduces a simple, terrifying question. What if my biggest weapon fails? The server's rhythm, built on predictable dominance, is shattered. Each subsequent serve carries the weight of recovery, not assertion. Conversely, the breaker gains an immediate, tangible reward. They have proven the favorite is human. This is not luck, it is a blueprint. It happened once, so it can happen again. The mental calculus of the match flips entirely. The favorite now presses, trying to blast their way back. The underdog relaxes, playing with house money. This early break is a seed of doubt planted in the first set. It grows with every service game the favorite struggles to hold. It transforms a match from a probable procession into a genuine fight, all from a single stolen game. But a server can be broken even without losing their serve. Sometimes the most damaging blow comes from a point they never actually lost. This is the saved set point. A player stands 1 point from winning a set. The momentum is entirely theirs. The finish line is in view. Then in a single rally, their opponent stretches, lunges, and finds a miraculous winner. The point is saved. The set is not yet over. The psychological cost of that denial is immense. The player who missed the set point must now replay the entire scenario in their mind. They had a clear path to victory and it was blocked. Doubt creeps in. Was that their best chance? Can they create another? Their opponent, by contrast, has just performed an escape act. The pressure has evaporated, they are playing with house money. A classic example unfolded at Wimbledon in 2001. Goran Ivanisevic faced a set point against Tim Henman in their semifinal. Henman, a consummate volleyer, had the entire court open. His put-away volley seemed certain, but Ivanisevic at full stretch slapped a desperate passing shot down the line. He saved the point, he won the set. Henman, visibly shaken, never recovered his earlier command. The missed opportunity became a turning point. Ivanisevic would ride all the way to the championship. Denying that single point does more than extend a game, it steals certainty. It replaces an opponent's confidence with a haunting question. If that didn't work, what will? But a saved set point is a wound inflicted in open play. It is a public moment of crisis. What happens when the crisis is internal and the game stops entirely? This is the territory of the medical timeout. A player, often trailing, signals for the trainer. The match halts, the opponent is left alone with their thoughts. This pause is not always about physical pain. It is a strategic reset of the match's entire rhythm. The flow of play, which might have been a torrent against them, is frozen solid. For the player receiving treatment, it is a chance to recalibrate. They can slow a racing heart, receive a quiet tactical reminder from a coach, and break the opponent's concentration. The classic example is the 2014 Australian Open final. Stan Wawrinka was battling severe cramp and a one-set deficit against Rafael Nadal. He called for a medical timeout late in the second set. The stoppage lasted several minutes. It allowed Wawrinka to receive treatment and, more importantly, to disrupt Nadal's relentless momentum. Play resumed, Wawrinka held serve, then broke. He won that set and ultimately the match. The timeout had physically addressed a real issue, but its greater impact was mental. It turned a runaway train into a stationary target. It transformed a narrative of impending defeat into one of managed recovery. The game's tempo was no longer dictated by the opponent's rhythm, but by the trainer's clock. But after a strategic pause called by a player, there is another kind of halt. One imposed by forces entirely beyond anyone's control, a rain delay. This is the ultimate momentum freezer. A player riding a wave of confidence, having won 5 straight games, walks off court. The rhythm is shattered. The heat of competition cools to the temperature of a quiet locker room. For the player who was losing, it is a lifeline, a chance to reset, to consult coaches, to mentally erase what just happened. The match they were losing is, in a very real sense, over. A new one will begin when they return. The 2012 Wimbledon final is the textbook example. Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal were locked in a brutal fourth set, the match already hours long. Then the covers rolled onto center court. The delay lasted over half an hour. When play resumed, the head shifted. Djokovic, who had been battling, found a new gear. He broke Nadal's serve immediately after the restart and forced a fifth set, which he ultimately won. The interruption had stopped Nadal's engine cold. These delays introduce a new variable. The waiting game. A player must now manage not just an opponent but time itself. Staying loose, staying focused, while momentum sits suspended in the damp air. When play resumes, it is not a continuation, it is a coin toss. And the outcome often depends on who better handled the stillness. A weather delay freezes the action, suspending momentum in a vacuum. But when play resumes, a new, unpredictable element often walks in with the players. The crowd. In an individual sport, the audience is the only true teammate. And when that energy shifts, it becomes a physical force on the court. This is rarely about simple support for the underdog. It is about a collective recognition of a contest. The moment a match transforms from a procession into a fight. At the 2012 Australian Open, Novak Djokovic led Andy Murray by 2-1. The fourth set was a brutal, grinding battle. With each long rally, each saved breakpoint, the Rod Laver Arena's energy began to coalesce. It was no longer just for Murray, it was for the struggle itself. The applause grew louder for extended effort, willing the match to continue. That external energy can feed a player's diminishing reserves, turning a likely loss into a possible win. Murray would ride that wave to force a fifth set. Conversely, a crowd's turn can isolate a leader. At the 2021 US Open, With the crowd firmly behind him, Novak Djokovic was one match from a calendar Grand Slam. His opponent, Daniil Medvedev, played near-perfect tennis. But as the reality of the upset set in, the New York crowd's allegiance did not shift to Medvedev. Instead, their energy focused on willing Djokovic back into the match. This created a paradoxical pressure on the champion. The deafening support became a reminder of the historic achievement slipping away. The weight of their expectation became another opponent. Medvedev, operating in a pocket of silence, could focus only on the ball. He won in straight sets. The crowd's desire for drama became its own kind of distraction, proving that the loudest support is not always the most helpful. It is the focused, unified energy aligned with one player's will that can truly lift and carry them. But what separates a simple shift from a total collapse? The line is famously thin. A saved set point can spark a comeback, but the true tipping point is something more profound. It's the moment a player stops believing the match is on their racket. The opponent's belief becomes a physical force. Every shot feels heavier. Every decision feels slower. This isn't just a loss of points, it's a loss of agency. We see it in the body language first. The shoulders slump inward. The gaze drops from the opponent to the court surface. The walk between points slows from a purposeful stride to a weary trudge. This is the visible crack, then comes the tactical unraveling. Safe high-percentage plays are abandoned for desperate, low-odds winners. The game plan disintegrates. A player isn't just being outplayed anymore. They are actively participating in their own downfall. The statistics paint a clear picture. Analysts at Wimbledon tracked a specific metric: unforced errors in the two games immediately following a break of serve. They found a 40% increase. One break didn't just cost a game. It infected the next two. The mistake isn't losing a point. It's carrying the weight of that point into the next one and the next. The tipping point then is not an event. It's a chain reaction the mind cannot stop. Once that first domino falls, the entire sequence often follows. This tipping point between a shift and a total collapse is often a deliberate creation. It begins not with a roar from the crowd, but with a quiet decision in a player's chair. This is the tactical pivot. A player abandons the plan that brought them to the match mid-flow to deploy something entirely new. It is a high-stakes gamble. Sticking with a losing strategy means certain defeat. But changing it courts chaos. The player must diagnose the problem, devise a solution, and execute it perfectly, all under extreme fatigue. The classic example is a shift from aggressive baseline play to a sudden, relentless assault of drop shots and net rushes. It turns power against itself. An opponent dialed into rhythm from the back of the court is suddenly scrambling forward. Their footwork exposed, their timing shattered. Andre Agassi was a master of this during his 1999 French Open final comeback against Andriy Medvedev. After losing the first two sets, Agassi stopped trading blows from the baseline. He began slicing returns low, chipping and charging, turning a clay court grind into a volleyer's contest. Medvedev settled into a deep rhythm, had no answer. The entire geometry of the match changed. A tactical pivot does not just win points. It forces an opponent to stop thinking about execution and start thinking desperately about adaptation. Their game plan, once a source of confidence, becomes a useless document. The momentum shifts because one player is playing a new match. The other is still fighting the old one. But after a conscious tactical shift comes a physical one, sometimes born of necessity. A player's racket is an extension of their body, a finely tuned instrument calibrated for feel and power. When it fails or when its tuning no longer matches the battle, a change must be made. This is the equipment shift. It is rarely a simple swap. At the professional level, each racket is weighted, balanced, and strung with specific tension to within a hair's breadth. A fresh racket, even from the same batch, can feel alien. A change in string tension, perhaps a few pounds looser for more power or tighter for control, alters the entire geometry of the game. The sound of contact changes, the ball leaves the strings differently. The most famous modern example is Rafael Nadal at the 2022 French Open. Facing Felix Auger-Aliassime in the fourth round, Nadal's chronic foot pain flared. His usual explosive movement was gone. During a changeover, he switched to a lighter, less powerful racket model. sacrificing some of his famous topspin for easier maneuverability. It was an admission of physical limitation, but also a calculated adaptation. The new tool changed his rally patterns, but it preserved his ability to compete. He won the match in 5 sets. An equipment change is a visible, tangible admission that the current state is not working. It broadcasts a problem to the opponent, but it also signals a solution being sought. The player must immediately trust this new variable, recalibrating their instincts mid-combat. For a few games, everything feels unfamiliar. Then, if the calculation is correct, a new stability emerges, built around a different kind of power. But the most deliberate disruption often comes not from the player, but from the chair. A tactical pivot is a choice, a code violation is a judgment. It is an external authority deciding that a player's emotional state has crossed a line. The moment an umpire speaks the words, a warning for an audible obscenity. A point penalty for racket abuse, the entire axis of the match tilts. The player is no longer just battling an opponent across the net. They are now in a secondary conflict with the officiating itself. The fracture is immediate and visible. Focus, once directed entirely at the next point, splinters. A portion of that mental energy now turns inward, toward self-control, or outward toward argument. John McEnroe's legendary 1991 U.S. Open tirade, resulting in a game penalty, is the archetype. His frustration at a call morphed into a confrontation with the umpire. And in those heated minutes, the match's narrative permanently shifted from tennis to temper. The opponent, momentarily forgotten, finds themselves gifted a new advantage. A rival now playing against 2 fronts. The true shift, however, often occurs in the points that follow the penalty. The player chastised must walk a tighter line. Aggression becomes calculated lest another outburst cost a game. Spontaneous emotion is suppressed. This forced restraint can dull a player's instincts, turning natural intensity into hesitant caution. Conversely, it can sometimes forge a sharper, colder focus. But the match's emotional weather has irrevocably changed. The court is no longer a neutral field. It feels for the penalized player like hostile territory. Following a code violation, a match's emotional axis can tilt violently. But momentum can also shift in near silence, forged in the deepest fatigue. The 5th set is a different sport. Physical reserves are gone. Mental clarity fractures. Every movement is a calculation of pain versus point. In this exhausted state, a single player finding a second wind can seem supernatural. It often starts with a hold of serve that defies logic. The body screams to stop, but the arm still finds a first serve. A backhand down the line, struck with precision that should be impossible. This surge is rarely about new tactics. It is a primal reset, a reversion to a core rhythm forgotten in the mid-match struggle. The player stops thinking and starts reacting, accessing a muscle memory buried under hours of tension. The opponent feels this change immediately. Their own exhaustion doubles. Shots they were chasing now come back deeper and harder. A 4-1 lead in the final set begins to feel fragile. The classic example is the 2008 Wimbledon final. Roger Federer led Rafael Nadal 2 sets to love. Nadal, facing championship points, found a physical and mental clarity that seemed to defy the scoreboard, the occasion, and his own spent energy. He did not win with new shots. He won by executing his oldest ones one more time when it seemed he had nothing left. The 5th set resurgence is not a comeback, it is a haunting. It is the ghost of a player's best self, returning to claim a match everyone else believes is already lost. That 5th set resurgence, that last defiant stand, often runs into a final, immovable object. Not a shot but a look, the champion's stare. This is the nonverbal ritual that signals total control has been seized. It happens at the baseline between points. The shoulders drop, the breathing steadies. The gaze fixes not on the opponent, but on the strings of the racket or a spot on the court. It is a deliberate, public withdrawal into a private zone of absolute focus. Rafael Nadal's meticulous routine before each serve, adjusting his shorts, touching his nose, tucking his hair, is a form of this. It reclaims the tempo of the match. Serena Williams's cold, unwavering eye contact with the ball before a critical serve projects an aura of inevitability. This stare communicates one simple, devastating message to an opponent. Your momentum is noise to me, this point is mine. It is a psychological land grab. While the player who just fought back is still riding an emotional high. The champion resets the entire emotional axis of the court to zero with silence and stillness. The arena holds its breaths. All that built-up energy from the crowd, from the comeback, dissipates against this wall of concentrated will. The match hasn't just stopped swinging, it has been frozen in place on the champion's terms. Then the serve comes. But the ultimate shift is often the quietest. It is not a roar from the crowd or a slammed racket. It is the sound of a single clean winner down the line, followed by silence. This is the silent hold. A player serves, trailing 5-4 in the final set. The opponent has all the momentum, the crowd, the history. One break of serve wins the match. The pressure is a physical weight. Yet the server holds, and they do not hold with aces or spectacular winners. They hold with two deep returns, a patient rally, and an unforced error from a now frustrated opponent. The game ends in 90 seconds. The scoreboard ticks to 5-all. Nothing outwardly dramatic has occurred, but everything has changed. The comeback is now mathematically impossible. The opponent's path to victory has just extended by a minimum of 2 more games. That fleeting window of opportunity has slammed shut. The psychological cost is immense. All the energy spent building to that moment 4-all breakpoint has evaporated. The opponent must now start the climb all over again, with the summit suddenly farther away. This silent hold is a declaration. It says the door is closed, the match is not over. But the fate in that quiet minute is often sealed. It hangs in the air for a fraction of a second longer than it should, the final ball. It carries the weight of the entire match, yet it is just a ball. It arcs over the net untouched and bounces once, twice. Then rolls to a stop against the backstop, and just like that, momentum evaporates. It was never a physical thing you could hold. It was a story the players and the crowd told themselves, a fragile consensus that one force was now stronger than the other. But that story ends the moment the chair umpire calls the score. The invisible tide recedes, leaving only the numbers on the board. The player who rode it for a full set walks to the net, their energy already shifting from combat to courtesy. The player who lost it is left with the hollow feeling of a grip that suddenly failed. In the locker room afterward, there will be no trophies for momentum gained, no official record of its turn. It exists only in the memory of the match, a ghost in the replay. Analysts will point to the breakpoint saved, the ace down the line, the fist pump that ignited the crowd. They are just the fingerprints it left behind. Momentum itself has already left the building, dissipated into the ether, waiting to be conjured again on some other court, under different lights, by 2 new players who will feel its sudden, inexplicable pull. The last ball in play is just proof that it was ever there at all.